once we start this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm sure you will want us to look at Kamal, who is at the front, not the one at the back. Okay.
Right.
Yes. So we'll go straight there, and possibly in just a minute or so, maybe you could explain the nature of your business to our agripreneurs so that they understand what you do, and most importantly, how long you've been in it, and how you started off, especially on matters capital.
All right. Mr. Amos, I'm trying to remove the video, the background, just give me some few minutes. Okay. Okay, so I can't remove it. I don't know how the technical guys did that.
I think we can just proceed. We were okay with that.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. So to start with, come again with the question, just so we can. Sorry, I lost thoughts.
No, it's okay.
Trying to remove it. Right.
It's okay. At the onset, it would benefit our entrepreneurs and fellow entrepreneurs if you could explain what you do in your business in very simple terms, how you came to be, and especially so regarding the issue of finances. I know we've talked about as entrepreneurs the issue of bootstrapping, which means that you start literally from where you are, and then you keep improving and increasing as you move on. So it's just a brief background of the business, how you started and how you are right now.
Thank you so much, Professor Amos. So Trotro Tractor, as I mentioned earlier, is the Uber for tractors. So we connect tractors to farmers using basic phones with no requirement for internet, and because we understand our farmers are locally normally in rural communities. So, and then the one thing that is also very important in our business that differentiates us with other competitors is the ability to financially include all our customers. So a farmer who has, say, 3 acres can quickly use the platform to dial a short code, request for the service, and pay with mobile money. Now, that mobile money aspect is the game changer. It allows us to know who requested at what time, and we can go back and use that data to add other services from banks to lend them more money because there is a financial history, insurance companies to give them insurance because there is already a transaction that has taken place in real time. So that mobile money aspect is what is making this whole thing very beautiful for our smallholder farmers. Now, we started this company in 2016 when we were privileged to be part of the Cosmos Innovation Center's challenge. The maiden challenge, and we were the first beneficiaries of the seed capital from that challenge in 2016. So the challenge came, I'm jumping straight forward into finances and how we survived until now. So in 2016, when we won that challenge, it came with $50,000 seed capital. Now, this seed capital is what we have to plan around and see how we can survive after the seed capital. So we need to quickly draft a budget and know how long this funds is going to take us. We need to factor in the capital expenditure required, so like computers and
Yeah.
servers. We need to know the human resource required. We need to know um, normal overheads, office
Yes.
utility, and all that. So
Yes.
um, the first part was done, and we were able to start working with what we have until we got our our first customer in the 8th month. In the 8th month, we started getting customers, and then revenue started flowing from these customers. Now, talking about finances, this is where it becomes very critical. The best way of financing your organization is um, your own money. So, money that does not come with a lot of influences from other people.
Thank you very much for that. One of the things that we've learned in this class, in this lesson, is that the financials are actually an outcome of the various activities that we undertake. So maybe in your own experience, Mr. Kamal, you could help us connect, help an entrepreneur connect and see how do the various activities that we undertake contribute to the costs and the revenues. And I know you had already started talking about that, how these activities connect, meaning that at the end of it, the activities that you take are the ones that you cost, and they are the ones that generate revenue. Over to you.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor. So I divide these things normally into three phases. Um, the beginning phase, or the phase one of this, is where you start with some saved money or money borrowed from families, or monies won from competitions like we got from Cosmos. And then comes to the phase two, which is the customer funded stage. Now, the customer funded stage is where it becomes very critical. This is where it becomes business. So at this point, you want to know how much you are investing in the business, and how much that is translating into profits, or revenues and profits. So revenues first. So there are some businesses that makes revenue, of course, that are monies coming from customers, but in the end, they would lose in the end. Now that is where it becomes critical. So that is why, for those who went to accounting school or accounting classes, there is profit and loss in the equation. So if you don't manage your customer funded stage well, you may run into losses, and that is what I want to share to our agripreneurs. Because if you make losses in producing food, then that is dangerous to the economy in which you are. Because then we don't have you to produce again next year or next season. Then food security is becoming more glaring. And so at the customer funded stage, you need to now understand your costings, basic costings. So there is a fixed cost, and then there is variable cost. Your
Yeah.
fixed cost, yeah, your fixed cost normally would be the ones that do not change over time. So your utility bills, your office, your salaries and other things would not change. But then you have to know your variable cost, how much you are going to put in, and know all that. Then you do your customer profiling and see how much that customer is willing to pay you. So including all marketing costs, you would know that this is how much I am going to invest. That is totaled, and how much I am going to generate from your customers. So the customer funded stage is what allows you to be operational and sustainable. If that stage works so well, you might not need to even go to the third stage, where I call the scaling stage. The scaling stage is where you would need credit or share your equity or build business, find other people to bring you in money. So at the second stage, if you're able to identify all the costs involved in doing your business, number one, your staff, very, very important, because no matter how you have a good product, if you have bad staff or bad team, they cannot interact with people. Number one, they cannot they cannot come to work as required on time. They will be lazy, and so your staff is core to your customer funded stage.
Thank
That
you.
is, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for the elaborate explanation. And I will want us to still come back to that. But for those of us who are already joining, we have Mr. Kamal Yakub, who is sharing with us experiences in managing finances. He's already talked about 3 stages of financing. That is when you are self-financed, meaning that you are at the startup point. And he brought in a very important stage, which is a customer stage, where you are raising revenues to be able to cover the costs. And then the third stage, where you might want to put in additional funds or get funds from other people. I want to pay more attention first to the second stage before we come to the third stage, because in our lesson, we connected the importance of marketing, the importance of the customers to the financial process. And you can see our mentor today is telling us that this is the stage that the activities that we take lead to revenues. Those activities also lead to the costs. He's also indicated to us about the investment required. So, Mr. Kamal, I will now limit you to this second stage so that we spend a few minutes on it before I go to the next line of questioning. So during the customer stage, as you have called it, it's important that one makes a profit. You've indicated that if you are making losses from what you are doing with customers, it's not very good for your firm. So in a very simplified way, how can one determine the gross profits and what does it mean? How can one determine their net profits and what does it mean? I will then come to the break-even.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor. So gross profits and net profit are very, very important, even to large organizations. So for us as small businesses or startups, it is even very, very necessary to at least make profits. So how it's an important financial term that everybody in business need to understand. So things like your gross profit, things like your net profit, things like your break-even point, things like how much it costs you to acquire a customer, and all that. You need to understand all these things. So let's start with gross profit. Your gross profit normally is how much you get from selling your stuff minus just the things that you can see as part of the operations. So normally in accounting, we call them cost of goods sold. I mean, the direct cost of your activities. So if let me zoom into someone who is producing cassava for a customer. So if I have a 10-acre cassava farm, in Ghana we use acres. So I want, in other places you use hectare, but let's use the unit for acres. So if you have a 10-acre cassava farm and you want to know your gross profit from that, quickly you need to understand how much you are going to sell that cassava. So your selling price plus and then you know how much you are going to get from the yield of your cassava. So averagely, 1 acre gives you about say 8 to 15 tons. So 8 to 15 tons of cassava is what we are looking at. So let's use the worst case scenario. Normally, it's better to use a worst case scenario in your projections before, and then whatever happens, if you do your protocols well, if you do all that is needed well, everything then jumps onto the profit. So the profit that you might have calculated would be even more. So worst case scenario, you have 8 tons of cassava per acre. Now you have 10 acres. That's about yeah. If my mathematics is good, you are looking at 10 times 8 is about 80 tons. So your 80 tons is going to give you close. You multiply that amount, and then you know your selling price per kg or per ton. So if you look at this, you can quickly multiply that and know that this is my gross profit. Now, that gross profit is is sales directly minus your small margins, small expenses that is directly involved in that. So, for example, those who helped you on the cassava farm, that you paid for, the things that you remove in that. Now, if you want to continue, let me quickly do that in mathematics in my Excel and see. So you have 10 acres, and each of the acreage is giving you let's say 20 tons or 8 tons. 8 tons is about 8,000 kg. Yeah, so 80 tons. So this gives you close to, assuming your farm gate price is say $1, you are looking at $80,000 gross revenue. And then when you less your production cost, direct production cost, you have some, let's say your direct production cost is say 20,000. That is how much you paid for people in there. You'll be left with say 60,000. Then if you take all other costs involving your fertilizer, your herbicides, your land, whether you rented the land. Hello?
Yeah, come on, we're here.
Yes.
We can hear you. Go on.
Very good. So whether you rented the land, whether or not you rented the land, you need to give it a cost. So your cost of insecticide, your cost of cassava sticks, all these variable costs and inputs would then be subtracted, and then you see how much you are getting. Now, this, you have to know all these things before you even start looking at other overheads like your marketing expenses and the rest. So after you have known all these things, then you know that that is your net profit. Normally, your net profit is your gross profit minus other costs like non-production costs or the overheads. I'm sure with this, anybody who wants to do cassava knows that I am already profitable before I start doing the cassava, and then leave the rest to the market forces to determine. All you have to do is to know what you are putting in, how much you are getting, what are your direct production costs, and what are your non-production costs, or the overheads as we call them. And then you arrive at your net profit. Now, let's go to one other important financial term that you need to understand on, which is the break-even point. So the break-even point normally is how many acres, or for example, how many cassava, how many tons of cassava will you sell to break even? And it's normally your total investment cost divided by your gross profit. So if you already know your gross profit and you know how much you are investing in the business, you just divide your total investment over your gross profit that you have already calculated. It is very practical. Most of the time you have to go one cycle and believe in your numbers on the field, not on the paper. The other very important indicator you have to also know is how much it costs you to acquire a customer. The average cost that you use in acquiring a customer.
Thanks, Mr. Kamal. Yeah, I'll come to that. So I just want us to just pause there and possibly welcome anyone who could have any specific question to type on chat. Even before we continue, we appreciate that sometimes getting these numbers is not straightforward for people who are more experienced like Mr. Kamal. It's a cup of tea, but for some of our entrepreneurs, it may not. So in case anyone has anything to say, and especially regarding to the determination of profits, which is really a very important part for every entrepreneur, we would be happy to answer. We would be happy to possibly re-explain that and get to the point. But Mr. Kamal, before we come to the cost of acquiring a customer, I would just want to ask you to re-emphasize, especially when should one be worried when they are making net losses. For example, you gave the 3 stages of the business. Sometimes you've just started. When you would be worried, and how long you can wait to make a profit if you start by making a loss, and then we will give Isaiah an opportunity to ask the question.
Right. Thank you so much, Prof. So if you are a small business, it is very important to know that sometimes it's just, especially we the farmers, we those in agriculture, we quickly understand this by using this proverb. You plant a seed and then you wait some time, and then you get more from your seeds. So you put in 1 seed of maize or corn, and you get minimum 750 pieces of that corn after within 3 to 4 months. And so this time is what you need to allow in your processes, and follow the process to understand that it's a process. So if I am, so when you start a business so if you are a maize farmer and you are planting, in accounting terms, we have what we call the accrual and then the prudent format. So whatever I'm spending now, the cash, the cash method of measuring your activities, and then the accrual basis. So if you are using the cash method, like those who buy and sell, they make their money in the same day. I buy a banana for 5 cedis and I sell it for okay, let me use a common denominator. I buy banana for $5 and I sell it for $6 and I make a profit of $1 in an instant. So the time is a very limited time. But if you are in agribusiness, it takes you 3 months before you do this buy and sell. And so if the first season your plan is to acquire many customers, you may be profitable, but your customer acquisition strategy is to grow the business like the way you plant the seed and then harvest at some point. So if your plan is to get say 10 customers who would buy 10 tons of maize from you, you are different from someone who is just selling all the just 10 tons to one customer per farming season. So your cost of acquiring 100 customers would eat into your profit that you are making now. But if that is not the case, and you are only buying to sell, your first season and second season, if there is no the growth strategy in your business, then you have to start making plans if you are losing in your first season.
Thank you.
Yeah,
yes,
I don't
yes,
know
yes.
if that is very
Yes, that is useful. I see Isaiah has a question. So Isaiah, please go on.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Good afternoon to everyone here too.
Afternoon.
Mr. Kamal, welcome to, and it's a great opportunity to have you here as well. I think I've spoken to you before, and we are also on the same group in Ghana, Young Entrepreneurs in Farming.
Right.
Yeah. I have a question that I will bring on board later. That one is specific to what you do. But for now, my question about getting your net profits. I saw that for the example you used, like where we had a revenue of $80,000, and after direct costs, I saw that you deducted the overhead cost from the gross profit, which helped us to get our net profit. But what I want to ask is that, do you have to deduct the overhead cost from one production cycle, or you need to spread it for a number of production cycles? Because it looks like the example you give, per my understanding, it was deducted from one production cycle. And so that's what I want to know, please. Thank you.
Right.
Over to you, Mr. Kamal. Thank you, Isaiah.
Right. Thank you, Isaiah, and thank you, Prof. So nice to meet you again, Isaiah. Yeah. So that there is a growth mindset. So if your plan of growing your business, or your plan is to acquire many customers, and then your overheads include marketing for 100 customers versus 10 customers. So for example, if you got 80 tons and your marketing is more than brought in, is targeted more than 80 tons. So the point is you want to have other people give you businesses that would come later. If that is your plan and it includes your, it's included in your overheads, then you don't have to do a seasonal accounting system. It has to include 3 or 4 seasons depending on your growth strategy. But if your marketing is done only for the season, then your expenses are considered to be for just that season. So if you are making a loss, you are making a loss against the particular season that you have produced. So it's a production cycle, like the way in normal accounting you have financial cycle, physical year. So in this case, if your marketing is or your overheads extends, so for those who grow or who produce maize, you have those who do 3 times in a year because they are investing in irrigation. So you cannot quantify irrigation cost for just one season. The irrigation cost would be depreciated according to number of years that it is going to stay on your farm as useful asset. And so if you have such costs involved, it has to be depreciated, and the amount that is applicable to the season is given to the season so that you see your profit or your loss as quick as possible.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I know in my line of inquiry, I will still ask you to elaborate a bit further about that depreciation. But before we do that, I know that you have somehow done this, but I would still want you to do it much more articulately, how you determine costs and why it's important to keep track of those costs. And at this, feel free now to get to your fixed, variable costs and all that. Production costs especially, and non-production costs and all that.
Right. Thank you so much, Prof. So let's get back to our cassava example, cassava farm example. So your variable cost normally would include your land preparation cost, which is the plowing, harrowing, and then planting of your cassava, application of fertilizer, weeding, application of insecticide, harvesting, and maybe transporting the cassava to the market. So that becomes your variable cost. Normally, you can call it the labor intensive part of the cost. Now you look at your input cost as your as part of your variable cost as well. Then we look at your fixed cost, which is what I described earlier, which includes depreciation. I would love to explain that further. But your fixed cost would normally not change no matter how much you produce in the season, which includes your office space, would include your cutlass, the things that are on your farm that would extend more than 1 year or 2, all those fixed costs. If you have money and you have bought a tractor, that tractor would be part of your, on the balance sheet, would be part of your fixed cost and the rest. So you need to understand this, especially the fixed cost aspect, because with your fixed cost, calculating your profit, if you put all, for example, if you buy a tractor for $30,000 and your yearly expenditure, your yearly revenue is say $10,000. If you add your tractor as part of your expenses, then you will see that you are making a loss of 20,000 already. But if you have decided that I'm going to use this tractor for 10 years, and so I divide the cost of my tractor over 10 years, that every year it becomes 3,000 cedis, $3,000 instead of the $30,000. So if you made a revenue of 10,000, the cost of the tractor that is coming out from your revenue is only 3,000. So you'll be left with 7,000, and then the other overheads would come in, and then you will see that you have indeed made some profit, not the loss that if the tractor was added on. So that happens to majority of all the fixed costs. You need to find what is the likely usefulness of your some of these capital expenditure on your farm, which includes cutlass, because cutlass would last more than that. A hoe would last more than that. Even I don't like calling cutlass and hoe. The cutlass, normally we classify it as 1, and then the hoe is 17. And at Trotro Tractor, as a mechanization company, we are looking forward to sending the cutlass and the hoe, which is the 17, into a museum for the next generation to come and see. We want people to use mechanized machinery to produce. But I'm just using this to emphasize that your fixed costs normally are your capital expenditure on your farm, and they don't have to be part of your yearly or your seasonal calculation of your profit.
Thank you. So I think I'm just summarizing what you've said, that you've made a very good observation with regard to the cost of materials, the cost of labor, and other inputs that one would use, that it's very important to get this cost. It's also important to get this other overhead costs, and then see within a certain period how many units did you produce, and then you can be able to get your unit cost. And getting that unit cost and tracking it is important, because you want to always ensure that your cost is not much higher than your competition, and you just want to ensure that you are managing the cost. Now, the next part of this, and we have learned this with our entrepreneurs, is with regard to the value proposition, because at the end of it, the value proposition must be equated to the price. So, Mr. Kamal, I now want you to request you to jump into pricing. Possibly you can share with us ideas with regard to pricing. For many people, it's usually a problem. How do I do appropriate pricing? What factors do we consider when pricing and all that? Then we shall come to revenue, and that's the point at which we will answer Daniel Yakubu's question. Go ahead with regard to pricing, Mr. Kamal.
Thank you very much, Prof. So with regards to pricing, so we say everyone is an accountant by default. So if you are pricing your product, your pricing has to be what your customer, or you have defined who your customer is, what your customer is willing to pay according to the value that you are of the product that you are giving them. So there are so many strategies of setting up a price. So if what you are doing is not entirely new, and there are other competitors on the market, then your pricing has some other people's business or product has influence on what you are also bringing onto the table. So if you price too high, there's a likelihood that nobody would come to you, because it's a substitute product. It's a product that can be bought at other places. So if I'm selling cassava at, say, 300 cedis a ton, and someone is selling the same cassava in the same market at 250 cedis per ton, I might go home with my cassava. So this competitive pricing, it's influenced from your competitors. And so you have to do an analysis of what other people are doing, selling their prices on, and then you can also match the price or come a little bit down. So depending also on how much you have done all your analysis in your budget, what is your break-even point, what are you willing to sell that you will not go down the loss line, and all that. So competitors determines, so if there are competitors, we say that it is much easier to price. So using the competitors approach would also make it much easier for you to do your pricing, either to price it down or to price it higher, depending on the customer. So the customers also play a role. So psychological pricing. So for example, there are 3 people producing the same cassava, but my cassava is grown organically without fertilizer and without artificial fertilizer, and so I'm selling my cassava to in a mall versus in a local market. So psychologically, people who are buying high nutrient or organic fertilizer, organic cassava, are willing to pay higher because you know them. So that's another one, using psychology to price, or using place to price your thing. But I don't know, Prof, if you want, if bringing in sales and pricing into the model would help clarify issues for other people. So for example,
yeah, we are actually coming to that. So
right. Okay.
But I just wanted us to take our entrepreneurs step by step, because as you may appreciate, financial
Right.
matters are not very simple to quickly grasp through and understand. That's why I'm trying to take it step by step. And I really appreciate what you have said with regard to setting prices from the perspective of your internal costs, because you see, we began by looking at exactly how much does it cost. Then we say, okay, how much pricing, what's the kind of profit level? And then we come to the price. And I also like the fact that you've also mentioned that there are external factors that determine the price. Most importantly, the competition. You've basically talked about the competition and how that competition then influences the price. And I also like the fact that you have connected the value proposition with the price. The example of the cassava that is organically grown, as a result of which the cassava that is organically grown attracts a relatively higher price because there is a value proposition. The other time we were trying to explain in layman's terms what this value proposition is. And ladies and gentlemen, you can see the value proposition now, bringing a price. You are able to sell your goods and services at a relatively higher price, just like our mentor for the day has explained. So Mr. Kamal will now move to the revenue aspect, and colleagues, anyone who has a question to ask can type on chat, and you can also raise your hand. I'll give you opportunity to ask the question at any point. Please concentrate the question on the things that we've covered, because we are moving on lesson 4 systematically from one area to another, just to be sure that we have a good flow. So let's talk very briefly about revenue and pricing models. And the question then would the question then would revolve around how you ensure that from the different products that you sell, I'm assuming here someone has different products, how you ensure that all of them collectively contribute to a profit. And most importantly, one product is not eating into the revenues of all the other products, something like that. Maybe you can make a quick comment. And also a quick eye on the chat. There's a question on, can Mr. Kamal tell us how he generates revenue from his business? I think that will be better answered at this point. And the pricing models that he uses to make profit from linking tractors to farmers. Mr. Kamal.
Right, thank you very much. Prof, I'll quickly go with the how we make money at Troto Tractor. So basically, the belly of our business is around commission. So if we give a tractor owner some customers, we charge some commission from giving them customers. The rest are other businesses that we can share later. Time would not allow us to do that. But commission is our main source of revenue in our business. Yeah, so talking about revenue, calculating your revenue and knowing how much you can get in the market. So normally, there are some products that are high selling, high revenue products, especially in agribusiness, in an agribusiness environment or in the value chain of agribusiness. So if you come to Ghana, for example, some of these things in schools or in classrooms defined differently, but on the field you can observe and know what you can make from a particular product. You do your own observation and you understand what everyone is looking for that has gaps that you can quickly fill and exchange for some money into your pocket. So if you take Ghana, for example, the crop that you would produce and always have profits or revenues guaranteed is the one that we use for our breakfast, the one that we use for our lunch, the ones that we use for our dinner, the same crop. So if you take corn, which is maize, for example, there is a beverage called cocoa that you can get for your breakfast. There is banku for your lunch, and then there is akple for your dinner, and there is tuwo for those from the north, tuwo zafi to do. So maize is staple and is used in different types of food, and is available. It is needed anytime. Now that is just human consumption. If you look at the chicken that we consume, they are also eating using maize as their feed. So looking at that, you can see that there is an addressable market that is entirely big for you to tap in. And so your revenue is normally available to you if you are able to get more of what is needed in a particular value chain. So if the maize value chain is what you are taking, you have to observe and know how much of that value chain are you targeting the district that you are in as to become the biggest supplier in the district, because everybody is using that for at least one meal a day. If you are looking at a region or a national, then you know how much you are going to address in that market to get to how much revenue you have, because you have already known what your customer acquisition cost is. You already know your break-even point. You already know your unit cost of production. And so if you know the entire addressable market that you are operating, then you can calculate and target and do your strategy, your marketing strategy, how you want to control the market, or how you want to participate in the market, we call it. So that becomes how you are going to make profit, make revenue in that. But those revenues are tied also in your costings, like we mentioned. So normally financials and managing financing is very, very important. We are touching some of them today, but it's very, very deeper than 1 hour or 2 hour discussion. But I hope that you would take this further and do much research and understand, or even call us after this to get more. But then your total addressable market, you need to understand. The reason why I don't want to use what is taught in classrooms is because when you get to field, you need to observe and you need to watch. You need to apply principles in the street to make meaning into what you are trying to achieve in the market. If you do it, so there is another thing that we as entrepreneurs rely on too much that does not do well for us, and that is looking always for secondary information to affirm what we already know. So if you are a Nigerian, you know what food everyone eats every day. If you're a Ghanaian, you know what food everyone eats every day. If you dig further and go to the market, you can do some surveys yourself and understand which market you are playing in and what's the size of the market you are trying to address. And so to calculate your market, total addressable market, you need to understand what is happening in the market. You need to observe what is happening in the market and do your own calculation and see if your team, so the machinery of making money. So the machinery of making money is the business, which includes the team, which includes your product, which includes how you sell that product. So after understanding all these, you need to know the total addressable market and see if your machinery system is able to go into the market and acquire as much percentage as possible in the market.
Thank you. Thank you very much for simplifying the total addressable market into a way that as an entrepreneur, I can simply look at it and say, this is what is total addressable market. Assuming I have 100% market share, all the maize that's being consumed in Ghana, but of course, bearing in mind that as a specific entrepreneur, it's really not possible to focus on the total addressable market. And so you've got to get into certain niches, the different channels, and be able to see what can you reasonably and profitably do within the aspect of the total addressable market. Thank you. Everyone, those who are online, we are still accepting questions. We have Mr. Kamal Yakub, who is an expert on finance matters and also an entrepreneur on SMEs, and he's responding to our questions and helping us break down our lesson number 4 on finances. So maybe before let me see if there's any question. Someone is saying that thank you for sharing about pricing, and that you mentioned briefly about using psychology in setting prices. What was all that? Maybe you can quickly answer in a minute so that we move to the last question.
Right. Thank you so much, Prof. Yeah, so it's a whole topic on its own, but psychological pricing, normally it's depending on the customers that you are selling to. So for example, if you decide to sell your cassava packaged nicely and branded, and it has traceability and everything at 5 times or even half the price of what is not branded, what cannot be traced in the market, then everyone would say, no, this guy is not selling cassava. It's something else. How can you sell a cassava that we buy at 100%, at 50% when you have done all these branding and other things on? So psychologically, people will just not buy your stuff because even though it's cheaper, it's half the price, they will not buy. But the same product, if you sell it 150%, 200%, depending on where you are selling it, people would go in for it and they will buy that. It's just like what we experience in fast food chains in Africa. So normally fast food chains are supposed to be cheaper, but in Africa you come, or in Ghana, somebody enters into a fast food joint and buys a chicken for 3 times the price that they would have bought on the street when it was fried by the local woman on there. And that psychology, that ability to sell to the customer from that fast food joint that is branded, that is being advertised, that is psychology that, look, we are creating awareness that we are the best. Meanwhile, it's the same thing. It's not anything. But then people would voluntarily walk in there and buy it 3 times the price that they would have bought it on the street. So depending on where you are selling, you can use psychology to increase your price and make more profit. And that is also what we call the value, what the magic of the value proposition. So you add certain things. So for example, somebody's buying your cassava. You have 2 people selling cassava. One person is saying that for every price, for every cassava that you buy, 1% is going to an orphanage. So the psychology of using orphanage to sell your product would attract more customers than somebody who is not putting anything on. So those who want to support the orphanages indirectly would come to you and buy from you instead of buying from just any other customer. So psychology plays an important role from diverse background, and then you can use that to your advantage and make more sales.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will now go to a part that you had already started talking about, and that is the cost of customer acquisition. Of course, now you've determined your total addressable market. You've determined what you can reasonably serve. You've determined your. So how do you determine the cost of customer acquisition? Why is it important to know that cost, and why is it important to keep tracking it?
Yeah. So customer acquisition broadly is termed as marketing, but it can go beyond marketing. But 80% is marketing. So you cannot produce a very good product and assume that it is going to sell because it's a good product. You need to let people know. You need to let the right people who need those products know. And the journey of getting your product to the customer is also you can put some numbers to that. You can put money to that. You can put you can calculate that. So when you calculate how much it costs for you to acquire one customer, that helps you to sell more of your produce. But you need to understand and know how much that cost is, so that if you are targeting say 100 of these customers, then it makes sense for you to do that. Because if you do that without knowing how many customers you would generate from that experience, what may happen is that you may overdo your customer acquisition, your marketing campaign, and then you have a lot of customers, but then you cannot produce. You cannot meet the demand. Now, when that happens, you are going to lose reputation in the market, and competitors can just use that to fill the gap and throw you out of business. If you also undermarket, so you market and you don't, you spend too less on marketing, and you have produce sitting in and rotting, especially for us in agribusiness, perishing under our warehouses and on our farms. Then you are also not doing the right thing. You have to know how much you want to sell and how much you want to spend on selling what you have. So to calculate your marketing or your customer acquisition cost, so for example, if you are selling the cassava and you want to sell it to say 100 people, the 100 people can be reached in your village, and there is an information center that charges say 100 cedis to do that advertisement. If you did that and you reached say 1,000 people, and out of the 1,000 people, 10% of that heard about your goods and bought your produce, you just divide the cost of how much you have spent and how much it has, how many people it has generated, and divide it and have your customer acquisition cost. So if you have 100 people who are buying your produce at 100 cities, you divide 100 by 100 and you have one city as your cost, customer acquisition cost. But if you just got 2 people, or say 50 people, then your customer acquisition cost is actually increasing. So the more customers you generate from your marketing expenses, the more you are saving in terms of your customer acquisition cost. I don't know if that helps.
Yes, that really answers the question. And I will now come to a question on chat. Someone is asking, now, sometimes we do have government control, and government tells you the price is $20 for this product. But then your cost might be higher than the cost of production. Your cost of production might be higher than the price set. Any ideas on how to deal with that?
Yeah, so some of these things are unfortunate, but from research, they rarely happen. But if they happen, then it's also if it's not so price controls by the government normally happens when there is a motive, that there's a notion that some people are intentionally holding or tidying the hands of the market, which we call in demand and supply. Some people are holding the demand, or some people are intentionally holding supply. So these things happens when there is situations like this. So it normally do not happen, but when it happens, you have no option than to play safe legally and stay in business, because ideally your costings should give you a leeway of knowing what to minimize in order to maximize your profit. So if you are taking a loss in 1 year, so that you remain in business and take some strategies to minimize some costs that can be avoided, so that you can stay in business and make profit the next year, that makes sense. But if it is a continuous price control and overheads and expenses of cost of production is higher than your profit, then you are not in business. You are in business for a loss. That is what I'm trying. I don't know, but if a country or a government is always enabling environment, so that's another thing I would ask as entrepreneurs to remove, to understand. We are not the victims. If you play the victim all the time, you would not make profit. So when there is a crisis, you face the crisis with strategies as an entrepreneur. If the crisis persists and it is an intentional crisis, you would have to migrate to an environment that allows you to operate optimally and make money.
Thank you very much for that contribution. I'm sure we've kept you on the hot seat for long, and we'll be winding up in the next few minutes. But before we do that, I would possibly ask if my colleagues, Fred, Mo, if you are there, anyone who's got a contribution to make on this, please anyone who has a contribution to make or a question to ask, please go ahead. My colleagues, Fred, Mo, Benjamin, if you're there, yeah. Or maybe I could call Fred, anything? You can just confirm.
Yeah, Prof, thanks. And Kamal, you've done some great justice to the topic at hand today. And just as you said, it's going to take a lot more sessions for the agripreneurs to really grasp this. So at this point, I'll leave it as it is. Tomorrow we have a session with them. We're going to do a deeper dive into it. So thanks so much. Over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. More?
Nothing from my side also, Prof. I always enjoy Kamal's comments. It's been an interesting session, and we'll be in touch for further engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think we will wind up at this point.
Prof, I don't know if there is a minute. There is one who is saying Vietnam imported rice. How do you deal with that?
Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead and answer that.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. So if it is consistently hurting cost of production, and people are importing, so people are importing employment and creating unemployment for us here. So anytime, so that's what I'm saying. If it's persistent, you would have to find an alternative business and do, because in the agricultural value chain, rice is not the only demanded produce here, because you cannot just allow importation if you have no control of how to change that at micro level, continue to produce at loss, because business that is losing is dangerous. That's what I keep saying all the time. If you are in a business that the cost of production are always completely higher than your margins and profits, you are not in business. And so that is not an agribusiness problem. That is a political problem. And so allow the politicians to solve the problem whilst you look at alternative value chain that you can produce at a profit on. So that's what I'm saying. We, as business people, if you can grow rice well, it means you can grow soya bean well. If you can grow soya bean well, you can apply it quickly and grow sorghum well, and find market for that and stay in business rather than playing a victim that we have no control on. It's unfortunate, but that is how it is.
Thank you very much for those insights. And the question, I believe, has been answered, that there are some things that are beyond your control, and what you could do is to start thinking about diversification and doing more than one product. So we'll bring this to a close, but tomorrow at midday East Africa time, or 9 a.m. West Africa time, we'll be having a deep dive on this. So we'll have a deeper lesson sharing session between ourselves. And so everyone, please remember that tomorrow we are still meeting. So with that, I think I'll bring it to a close, unless if Fred or Mo, you have just one last thing or update to give to our agripreneurs.
Right. So I'll come in before Mo if he wants to come in. Yeah, so for tomorrow's session, I would urge our agripreneurs to kindly go through the materials, just so that we're able to appreciate and contribute meaningfully to this session. So kindly go through the materials, read around it, try try and link it to what you're already doing. Try and make it as practical as possible so that when you come into the session, we're able to guide and help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Priscilla is saying that the session was very insightful. I also found it to be. Thank you, Kamal. Mohammed, any last comment or update with regard to the program?
Nothing from my side. Thank you, everyone, and feel free to leave the room so we can have our trainers debriefing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So all the best. Please feel free to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal.